Curiosity. What are you so curious about? Everything, Mr. Curiosity.
Alrighty, folks, Joe Snedeker here, also known as Mr. Curiosity, and my guest today is a curious dude. That's all I could say, right? You are a curious dude. It's John Maday, and I always thought it was Maday. We'll start with that. Why can't it be Maday?
Well, it could be no. That's the way the family has always pronounced it. I'm half Polish and half Ukrainian. The Polish, it was Madaj, Maday, and then some of the family pronounce it Maday, some pronounce it Maday, some pronounce it Mayday. We pronounce it Mayday. See, the J morphed into what became anglicized and morphed into a Y.
Got it. I would just think because of the military Mayday that you wouldn't want that. You want to separate that from you, but you're saying that works in your favor.
It works in my favor for a number of reasons, because most people do not forget that name. And the things that I get involved in, you want to be remembered. You want to be branded.
Yeah.
Because I'm everything I do, just to give you an idea, everything I do in my life right now, I refer to as uncompensated labor. I'm in a position where it's all volunteer work.
Well, that's what happens when you get to a certain point in life, right?
When you get to a certain point in your life, you do a couple of things. One, you either sit on the porch, watch the world go by, and wait for the grim reaper to come and take you off that porch.
Well, wait, before we get into it, I just want everyone to know that John Maday, here's our history together, and then we'll get into your philosophies of life. I love it. We're going to talk a little bit about Agnes, because you lived through it. We're going to talk about your rich history. But John Maday, you and I met decades ago at a river group, a live broadcast that WNEP did.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then this guy is there. He's effervescent. He's unique. He's bizarre. He's full of knowledge and wisdom. And it's you. And since then, I haven't seen you that much, but I do know that could you give us a title now, at least, so people who are just getting into this could say, oh, now I'm going to listen. Trust me, you want to listen. But what is your title?
Okay. There's a multiplicity of titles. So
see, it's never easy.
Involved with a multiplicity of organizations. And as I said, all uncompensated labor. So and remember now, you and I have kind of the same ideas about titles.
Yeah.
You don't want to stand on ceremony. I'll give you the titles first, and I'll explain a little bit about what those titles actually mean, especially when you're volunteering. I am Executive Director of the Riverfront Parks Committee.
I didn't even know there was a Riverfront Parks Committee.
We've been around. I've been with the organization for 32 years.
I know you have, but I didn't know that was like the official title. That's interesting.
Yeah, we are an environmental education organization, environmental education, awareness, stewardship, advocacy, and recreation. We teach about the environment, but we hold events such as Riverfest and Chalk Fest and everything else to bring people together. And we have all these displays about the environment with all the fun stuff, the bands, the food, the activities for the kids. And
Title number one. Title number two.
President of the Downtown Wilkes-Barre Business Association.
Wow, big shot.
I'm going to tell you something about those titles, though, and I'm also I'm on the board of the Diamond City Partnership, which is the Downtown Wilkes-Barre Business Improvement District.
Is this title number 3 already?
Yeah, and then I am also on the board of the Luzerne County Flood Protection Authority.
Title number 4?
Yeah, we manage the levee system, the 16-mile levee system up and down the river. That's a serious proposition.
Oh man, would you have a title number 5, like husband, father, or anything like that, or do you want to get into that?
No, I am a independent agent.
Okay. All right.
Formally married, but it didn't take.
See, now it's getting juicy. Now we're getting juicy.
Oh, I can tell you about that.
All right, so
let me just say something about those titles.
Okay.
Because people say, "Oh, executive director, president, blah blah blah." Oh, you sound like you're so important. I said, you know what those titles get you? When you're holding an event, when you're running an event, you have something going on. That means you get to be there before everybody else does, and you're there after everybody goes home. That's it.
So I get the feeling from you, and this is what I like about you, that you're irreverent, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. So we're two irreverent minds here that are connecting. And you don't even like those titles, I bet, because titles and people who put them on cards and letterheads and brag about it, they're the worst people in the world.
Here's the problem with that. I always try to explain the title away when I give them the card. Because I don't want somebody to think, oh, yeah, how can I approach you? You're the executive, you're the president. No, it's part of the corporate, because the Riverfront Parks Committee is a nonprofit. It's a official nonprofit corporation. It's a 501c3. The business association is a 501c6. The other one is a 50. I mean, these are technical terms that we use. That's why we have officers in the company. In the organization.
Gotcha.
To comply with regulations.
But what I need to know is the arc of your life, how you ended up with those 3, 4, 5 titles. So let's go back. I know you're not vain enough to hide your birth year. Tell me that. The year that you popped out of a uterus was when?
I'm gonna do it this way. I was born at a very early age in New Jersey. What exit? New Brunswick.
Yeah, but see, you're not giving me the year, so you are.
I'm going to give it to you right now. Doesn't bother me. 1944.
Oh, okay. So 1944. So now I can put this in the timeline and placement. So you're born in Jersey, 1944. World War II is going on. You're
Right.
just a newbie on the planet. What are your parents doing? What are they all about?
And here's the other part of this. I was only there for about a month to 2 months. My parents are originally from this area.
Oh,
My father had a job there in a leather factory, and I don't know what the circumstance was, but they were ready to move back here. My father's from Nanticoke. He's the Polish part of the family.
okay.
My mother she's the Ukrainian, Russian Ukrainian. She grew up in Hanover Township. However, part of her upbringing, she grew up for a while. She was a kid growing up somewhat in Pleasant Mount, and she said that she was kicked in the head by a horse when she was a kid.
I know exactly where that is, up in Susquehanna, Wayne County. It's about 20 miles north there. That's a whole different world there. So it's very rural farmland.
So somehow her family lived up there on a farm, but then they migrated to Hanover Township. So when they moved back here, they moved to Hanover Township. And then everything took off from there. So I grew up, my formative years were spent in Hanover Township.
I got you. But are you officially a war baby?
Yeah. I'm part of that baby boomer type thing.
Did your parents ever say, like, oh my God, Adolf Hitler was in Europe and we were creating you? Did they bring that up or no? Like, it was
no,
risk?
that was never part of the discussion. Everybody. Here's the issue with this. The one thing that I remember about all this is because we were mid to lower income, so everybody was scrambling, and everybody in the neighborhood was the same way.
Yes,
We all had the same interactions. We were all in the same positions. Some people worked in factories, some people worked in the coal mines. So in the little town I lived in Hanover Township, these little townships, they had all these little burgs. I grew up in one we call Corncrest.
Okay.
There's Corncrest, Hanover Green, Breslau, all of them. I was in Corncrest. I'll tell you something. In that little town, there were 3 grocery stores within just a couple of blocks of each other.
Well, there's no Wegmans, there's no Weis. That's why.
Everybody walked because mass transit. Everybody used mass transit. Cars were few and far between. But then everything changed after that. So I grew up there. The summers were spent working at Sansui Amusement Park. Oh yeah. And are you familiar with where Hanover High School is? The Hanover.
Not really. I know the area, but not specifics.
Well, that's where Sansui Park was. Sansui Park went back to the 20s. It was one of those amusement parks that everybody went to. Well, you probably knew Rocky Glen.
Yeah, that's at my time. Yep.
Right. Yeah, that's in Music, and then there was Hanson's in Dallas, and then there was one in Hazleton. But they're all close by. So I grew up there, and I worked there. I worked there for a while. I started working there when I was 14 in the summer.
So you're busting through adolescence and puberty, and I guess this is the time now when you're into the 50s and 60s. It's
Yes.
Elvis. Here comes the Beatles. Here comes the British invasion. Here comes the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
When that's happening, did you like feel it?
Well, here's the interesting part about that. When I graduated in 1962.
Right.
So that decade from 1960 to 1969, excuse me, was extremely transformational. Everything changed from the time of everything looked gray before then because television was black and white. Men were dominated everything. And by the end of that decade, you're right. I lived through all that change. I lived through all of that history.
Yeah, that's six. You're right. Those 10 years, you still have segregation. You still have women being held down by man. You still have no one on the moon. Space exploration didn't even start. I mean, what a whole different world.
It was from the time when I was born, and then went through. I grew up through the 50s, graduated in 62, went into the Air Force, and everything, all of that stuff just changed completely. Our lives, and I lived through that history.
When you're a kid or even a teenager, it just seems normal. Like, this is my time. Of course, everything's changing, right? You just go with it.
But absolutely. But when I look back on it now, what a transformation. We went from Donna Reed making dinner with a dress on and heels and a girdle to the end of the decade. Women were burning their bras.
I like the part with the heels and the vacuum, though. For some reason, that sounds sexy to me. Maybe I'm a weirdo.
Well, they were going back and forth and back.
Yeah. So
and her husband, the doctor, would come home and he'd have his pipe and she'd bring him his slippers and his drink or whatever. And the kids would be, they'd all sit around the table and have such a good time. And I'm thinking, people don't live that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're right, though. Beaver Cleaver. Even when I grew up, I was born in 66, so I grew up through the 70s. I never saw my dad, and I have a younger brother, use a vacuum, change a diaper.
Right.
He never cleaned. He was just like a dad's dad, and that's all changed.
Never did it, and the male children never did it either.
Yes, it's amazing. I'm glad things have evolved to where we're at now. It's a lot better, at least with that.
Evolved. Look what's happened, especially with race relations. Everything that Medicare. Johnson signed the bill for Medicare, and it changed people's lives. Retirees. So that decade was so my opinion, it was the most transformational decade in our history because we started to doubt government at that time. Because of what was happening in Vietnam. Don't forget, I served in the military at that time. I was an Air Force medic, and I served from, in the 60s. So I went through some, let's say, interesting stuff. That was not a whole lot of fun.
So if my
I'm going to show you something.
But wait, if my history is correct, did you skip Korea and skip Vietnam or no?
I was Vietnam.
You were kind of in the middle, though, because, right? I mean, by the time Vietnam started.
Yeah.
I love it. What do you got to show me there? What do you got? He's pulling out something here. He's got a. Who's that handsome guy?
That's me in my Air Force uniform.
1962?
No, this would have been about right around about 1963.
There it is. What a handsome dude. So when did Vietnam start? 64, 5? I forget.
No, Vietnam actually started about 10, 15 years before that, but the war intensified with American involvement during 63, 64, 65, 66.
There you go.
So I was right in the middle of all that.
So you were in Vietnam?
Yep, I was a medic.
Whoa. So I know it brings up probably a flood of harsh feelings. Could you summarize?
It's very good that I don't even like to talk about.
Is that right?
Well, yeah, because I made it back, and that's one of the reasons that I kind of get involved in things.
So a guy like me who's seen Apocalypse Now and all the Vietnam movies, is it hyperbole? Is it realistic? Is it?
Well, a lot of that is for drama purposes.
Of course.
There's a lot of it that's that's real.
Didn't Marlon Brando say, I think in Apocalypse Now, you can, when he's in the jungle, he said he wants to be home. And then when he was home, he wanted to be in the jungle.
Some people are like that. I just wanted to get out of there.
You just wanted to get out of that thing. Of course you did.
You know, who wants to be, you know, and I had the extreme irony of I was trained to save lives, but you're also trained to take lives. You know, you have to carry a weapon.
It's human beings at their worst.
It is. But you go, you take the oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You know, this is the drill.
Right.
But when you take that oath, you have to be serious about that. And ever since then, every time I get involved in something, if I make a commitment, it's a responsibility. It's the same as taking an oath.
But John, at the same time, you seem like the kind of guy who is a free thinker and who questions everything. Did you start thinking at the time, maybe this isn't the right thing? Maybe this isn't what our government should do? Maybe
Absolutely.
You did all that.
Well, because it's a civil war.
Right.
And you can't win a civil war with overwhelming military force, typically. I mean, the only way you can win it is you have to occupy, because as soon as you leave, they're going to go back because you're invading somebody's country.
Similar to what's happening now in the Ukraine.
Right. But think about it. Well, that's a little different because it's an enemy, but they're looking at Russia's looking at it as civil war. That's a whole different set of politics.
Right.
But here's the other part of that. If you look at, just think about our civil war. You know, the North and South.
Right.
Another country came in and said, "We're going to stop this, and we're going to invade you to stop it."
Could you imagine that? You're right. What?
We wouldn't put up with it.
If anything, it would have united the North and the South, right? Yeah. Maybe that would have been the answer then.
but the politics of that, a lot of what was happening, no one wanted to admit that. Not one politician, a president, or anyone wanted to admit that this was unwinnable.
Right.
So you keep on going and you keep on fudging the numbers to make it look better than it is, and then everything just fell apart. So, but I did my part, and I feel good about it. And I will tell you this: my time in the military opened all kind of doors for me after I mustered out.
Well, I was going to say, so now when you come back home and it's the late 60s, early 70s, you're in your mid 20s, what happened?
Well, my thought always was, because as I said, growing up, you know, we're low to mid. We reached the Riverfront Parks Committee.
Oh, I like that. I like it. See, this is real, folks. Beautiful, beautiful. The answering machine goes off.
I thought I turned that off. But,
no, I like here. Let's hear what they have to say. No, we better not.
I tried to order a pizza.
But I mean, it's peace and love. It's 69, 70. You're back home and you're in your early mid 20s. What's going on?
Well, here's the deal. And part of this story takes me to your business, in the broadcasting business, that has a direct relationship with your station.
Wow.
So, but here's the deal. I always wanted to seek higher education, but we were lower income, middle lower income. So I wasn't going to school. So my idea was, if I go into the military and I survive, I could use the GI Bill to leverage that to go to school. But I was in what was called, when I joined the Air Force, it was 4 years active, 2 years inactive. I did my 4 years active. On 2 years inactive, they could call you back at any time.
Okay.
So it's going on again.
Oh, here comes the message. Now everyone's going to hear it. We better.
Overnight on Friday, I have to get somebody to cover the first 2 hours because
This is directly related to Riverfest.
Oh, see that?
I'm having a security detail down there to watch it Friday and Saturday, and he's calling me to tell me he'll be there.
As long as he doesn't use foul language or give out a personal number.
No, I know these people. They're good. So let me further explain this. The 2 years inactive, I didn't want to get involved in going to school because I could have been called right back and sent right back to where I was. So I thought, don't go to school because you'll be interrupted. So I went to Washington, D.C. for a couple of years to work. A friend of mine worked there in a data processing operation at the Civil Service Commission, and he was going to get me a job there. So I said, okay, I'll come to Washington. Maybe, who knows what will happen. So I worked there for 2 years. It was interesting. I almost thought about staying, but I thought, you know what? I want to get this education, but I had to come back here because it was less expensive to live here.
Yeah.
So I decided to do that. And my first stop was I came up with this idea. I wanted to get in because I've always been interested in news, information, history. So I said, I'm going to go into broadcasting. And how do you go into broadcasting?
Yeah.
State Wilkes-Barre campus has a mass communication course that takes you through and gets you into the next part of the curriculum to do that, to train you to do that.
So kind of without the liberal arts bachelor's degree nonsense, you just go right into the communication journalism part?
Courses, you take other courses that fit in with that. You had to take math courses and all of that.
Okay.
But I was focused on mass communications. And Penn State and the other schools had what they call an open door policy for veterans. In other words, I didn't have to take any tests to go in. We just walked in, filled out the paperwork, but they put you on probation for a semester just to make sure you weren't wasting your time, that it was right for you.
Well, this makes sense. So you're having fun, you're getting an education, you're back in Luzerne County.
So here's the deal. The second semester, I was able to get a internship
Okay.
at a local AM radio station that was on Union Street in Wilkes-Barre, WBAX. And one of the owners, now get this, one of the owners, there were 3 owners of it.
Okay.
One of the owners was a guy by the name of Jim Ward. I don't know if you ever heard of it. I bet Mike Stevens would know the name.
Oh, I know Jim Ward. Sure. That's a legend.
Right, Jim Ward. But he was one of the owners of that. He was Buckskin Jim. You didn't know that. He was at Channel 34. That was an ABC affiliate in downtown Wilkes-Barre.
Wow.
And the two merged. And that station, that building is still right across the street from where I am now. I remember they had the big call sign letters on the outside of the building. I'm sorry, WILK, not W. I was at WBAX, that was WILK.
I was just saying, which, I mean, legendary local radio here.
Yeah. So he was one of the owners. So I had an internship, and what I was doing, and then they gave me a part-time job. And what I was doing was news, and I filled in as a DJ, sometimes in the afternoon and sometimes on the all-night flight. So there I was.
Well, I love it. So are you living back home with the parents? Is there a woman in your life? You're working part-time? What's all happening?
Oh, that's juicier yet. No,
What were you, dating a stripper? Well, how could that be juicy?
No, here's what's interesting about that. I wasn't moving back home.
No.
I'm an adult. I'm on my own.
Yeah.
But when I was in Washington, I met this young lady, and we developed this relationship. And then the relationship was going great. But I said to her, you know what? I'm going back. I'm going to school, but I'm going to do it back there. And I'm thinking, she's not going to uproot herself from Washington because she was doing okay. But and we were kind of living in Arlington, Virginia. And here, the next thing you know, she tells me, because she had been back here a couple of times. We came back to visit, and she liked it here. She says, "I'm coming with you," which was a big surprise to me.
She chose you over her home area. Yeah. She's following you. So
she was originally from Indiana.
This becomes your wife.
Pardon me?
This becomes your wife.
Eventually.
Almost
15 years later.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So you get your.
Oh yeah.
So you're working in communications. You bring back a pretty lady. You're here back in northeastern PA. Yeah. It's 1970. What now? 1, 2, 3. What's happening?
It's about 1971, 1970. Yeah, about 1971.
Okay.
So I come back here, and I'm in that radio station. And the one thing that I became aware of, this could be a very nomadic enterprise because it takes a while to become established. And usually the first place you're not going to be established. So I thought at that point, the song from WKRP, the theme song?
Yeah.
at that point in my life, I wasn't ready to, as that song goes, move up and down the dial to establish something. I mean, we were doing news. I was doing rip and read from the Associated Press, and doing weather and rewriting stories from the newspaper, and it was great stuff.
But your goal was to not be nomadic and stay local, find a good job, hunker down.
Yeah, hunker down. So, but she, as I said, she came back here with me. She picked up a job. She moved on pretty quick. She picked up a job with King's College.
Well, this sounds like a great beginning.
It was a great beginning. And so what I decided to do was you know what, I have to do something a little different. So I decided to move from Penn State over to King's and study business administration, and I ended up with 2 degrees, business administration and political science.
Boy, you're killing it in the early 70s then. Here you go.
And then she picked up a job at City Hall in Wilkes-Barre. So I'm going to King's, she's at City Hall, and then I pick up a part-time job with IBM because they liked hiring veterans.
Binghamton?
So all the while I was in school, I'm working at IBM part-time. And
IBM where though? Binghamton?
No, IBM, there was a marketing office in downtown Scranton.
No, I never knew that.
There was one on Wyoming Avenue, and then we moved over to the Northeast, which was the former Northeastern Bank building, which is now PNC, the administration offices.
But John, I hope we didn't skip over one of the main reasons we're talking. Did we skip over 1972, or we're not there yet?
Well, if you want to talk about 1972, we could talk.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering. So you're working at the radio station. You're going to college. You're bringing a lady back from D.C. and here comes June 1972.
Here's the other part of this. This is the other part of this. In between Penn State and King's, I took a brief hiatus because I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. So I took a part-time job. I mean, not a part. I took a full-time job delivering for a printing supply company, delivering to printers. So that landed right in that time frame of Agnes. So I'm driving this truck around all over northeastern Pennsylvania, all the way down near Philly, up to the New York State border, and going back and forth. And then this Agnes hits. You know, first it was a hurricane, then it was a tropical depression, and then it settled over here, and it kept on raining and raining and raining and raining. We know the story. So through that whole week, and we know what happened through that whole week, it became more intense and more, the officials kept on talking about, we're getting really concerned about this. This could cause a flood. So we're in the apartment, and right a couple of days before, because the water's coming up.
You and your woman are in this apartment.
Right. It was
28 years old.
Yeah, about that. Downtown Wilkes-Barre on South Washington Street. So it's not too far from the river. So that week, my sister calls me. She lives in Edwardsville. She and her husband, pretty high up on the hill, well out of the floodplain. She said, "You know what? If anything comes up, you can always stay here." And I think I'm listening. I think I hear her husband in the background grumbling about that.
So, no husband wants visitors like you, their brother-in-law or whatever, right?
Right. And I don't want to be there with him.
He doesn't want you there.
So the night before, the night that all happened, it was a Thursday night going into Friday. About 3:00 in the morning, I get a phone call from my sister, and I already, we had stuff packed. I get this phone call from my sister, and she said, "You know what? We just heard on the news that the bridges may be closed by about 10:00 in the morning because it's that serious."
Meaning you got to get out.
I got to get out. So we took all of our stuff, and I'm thinking, going to be gone for maybe 3 or 4 days. So I had enough stuff for about 3 or 4 days tops. So head over, we drive her car over. I drop my stuff off. She drops her stuff off. And then, we're, listening to the news because the television is still on. And a call comes out from General Frank Townman. He's the emergency services coordinator or whatever.
Okay.
Looking for volunteers to come down to the levee system to pile sandbags, go through that process. And, my military background, I said to my sister, I got to go. So I jumped into the car. I took her car and I drove down from Edwardsville down to Market Street. and parked a pretty good distance away because I didn't want to get too close
Right.
in case the water came in. So I, ran up, and there they were. There's thousands of volunteers up and down the valley, and there we are, filling sandbags with the tons of sand, and it's raining, and we're piling them, and it is muddy, it is messy, and we're dirty, but we felt as if we had to do this. But later in the morning, we get word that where the Kmart used to be in Edwardsville.
Of course.
Okay. Well, the water also can back up there, come out of the banks and come back up there. Well, some of it was starting to come over that way, and there was a call that the river was getting really high on in front of us. So General Townend, they sounded these sirens. They said, everybody better get out, because what could have happened, we could have been encircled and trapped in the middle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so the sirens went off and everybody scattered. But the one thing I do remember about it was not this mass panic. People were talking with each other and saying, maybe we'll meet again sometime, and thank you very much for helping. And
Oh, I see. Yeah, because I'm wondering that myself. So it was like a slow process of
right. Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember people panicking. And so I quickly moved back to where the car was and turned it around and drove back and drove up the hill. And
but at that point, I mean, you've been through Vietnam, you've been through different jobs and educational foundations and systems. The things you're seeing in the valley, like places you grew up, places you shopped at, everything's going underwater. Was it freaky? Yeah. Was it bizarre? You hadn't seen anything like that ever.
Yeah, and it was a feeling of, well, maybe it won't happen, but it did. And then the feeling was, especially the next morning when you woke up, it was a crisp, cool, almost cold, brilliant blue sky. And you walked down the hill and you could see the water there, and you knew that everything else was covered. And you looked at that and you think, what do we do now?
Right.
But then you had to figure out, how do you survive where you are? I'm at my sister's house, and we're wondering, when are we going back?
Was the apartment you left underwater?
No, I was on the second floor. So came up to the first floor, but all the physical plant, all the infrastructure, all the heating, the electrical plant and all of that was completely destroyed. So you couldn't get back in the apartment. So my theory of 3 or 4 days.
It became what?
Months.
Is that months. So many people, I didn't realize that, separated from their belongings for weeks, if not months.
Right. Yeah, because you couldn't, where are you going to go? But then when the water receded.
Yeah, but once the water receded, didn't they say, okay, you can come and get your essentials? I mean, wasn't there anything like?
No, you get more stuff out, yeah. But then you couldn't live there because it's going to take a while. And, there are certain priorities, certain infrastructures, health and human services would come first, fire safety, all that would come first. And then you start putting everything back together.
So 50 years ago this month, do you recall like the smells and the thoughts, the emotions?
Oh, the mud, the smell from the mud and the muck and what was in there. It was, it was disgusting. But here's one anecdote about this. So we were away from there, and we were able to get back in and get some stuff out. So then we go back, but then we get back again. It was weeks later to get into the apartment and maybe start. I don't even know what we thought we were going to do, because we couldn't move back in.
Right.
But open the refrigerator. Now, remember the electricity of that.
That fridge hasn't been open in weeks, month.
And all you see is green.
Is that right?
It's completely covered in mold. But at that point in your life, you're not, even if you could find a refrigerator, because everybody's trying to replace, appliances. We were in a financial position to buy a new refrigerator, so it had to be clean. But everybody else was doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be disheartening. It had to be emotional draining. It had to be depressing.
Yeah, well, yeah. But then when I still couldn't get back, I still had that job driving that delivery truck, and she had a job at King's. So she went back to help, whatever they had to do to get themselves back, cleaning things or whatever. And I had to go back to driving that truck, but you couldn't go. You had to go take these detours because most roads were closed.
And this is what? How long after? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Almost a month after. Sometimes some of these roads were still impassable. So it became a real challenge. But I will say this: the one thing I always credit was my military training, because when you go through that, you're trained to be adaptable. You're trained to adjust. You're trained to succeed. You're trained to be mission oriented. So that's what you do. You just focus on that and you don't panic. You keep a cool head about you, because if you panic, you won't do anything, and that will not achieve anything. So it's just a way of looking at life too.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because again, I was just in kindergarten at the time. I have no memories of all of this. So we appreciate your help and people like you. I want to take you back to some of these stats from June 1972. Do you remember what the number one song was in the nation? You're going to be shocked when you hear this.
I'll tell you one thing that I do remember. Before you tell me, what was on the marquee of the Paramount Theater?
What was on there?
A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, and that is
that's one weird movie.
I saw that when I was 18, and
Malcolm McDowell.
I still don't understand it. What
I know, I saw it, and I still don't understand
the
it.
eyes taped, the faces. Oh,
yeah.
All right, number one, Candyman, Sammy Davis Jr.
Candyman can.
Average price of a house, $29,000. Gallon of gas, 36 cents. A car, $3,800. Unbelievable, isn't it?
A pound of loaf of bread was about 22 cents, I think.
Yeah. Cowboys, national champs in football. MASH just premiered. Watergate was happening. American Pie, another great song. Don McLean.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you lived through all this. And so to go from that, because you still have a life to live. What happens now? In your late 20s, the flood recedes. Could that have been one of the things that got you into this river position you have now? And
well, that was years later. That was in 1990. I got into that, but that was one of the reasons I got into it, was because of the impact that the river has and the environment and how it could change it. So when I knew about this organization, a friend of mine told me about it, and I said, "Yeah, I think I'd like to be involved." So we got involved with trail cleanups, and we gradually morphed into education, and we teach people about the environment. We also try to emphasize the fact that the river is not an enemy. The river is here. Rivers go up, they go down. But that's also one of the reasons why I accepted a position on the board of the Wilkes-Barre County Flood Protection Authority, because what we do is we help to prevent that ever happening again. But nature is nature, and it could happen, and we have absolutely no control over that. But we can do as much as we can to prevent it.
What a lot of people don't realize, you made that very good point, is how old the earth is and how old the Susquehanna River is, which was hundreds of millions of years old. Rivers are supposed to flood. The entire valley, which is flat and fertile with rich minerals, is because if you look at it over tens of thousands of years, millions of years, it's a norm. It's a steady. The river winds, floods, enriches the soil, retains its banks. This is what happens.
It's a natural process.
It's a natural process. I'm wondering when the Native Americans were here and they probably saw the European settlers and white man move into the valley. I bet you they got a few laughs out of us for building so close to the river. They had to, right?
Well, and the reason we did it was because it was a form of commerce. You're close to the river and you could build something, and then you could move products up and down the river.
Right, but don't you think they had a chuckle out of it because they had the rich history of it, and they knew all that's going to be underwater. They have seen that in their.
They weren't living there, and they weren't living in close proximity to the river.
No,
just to stay up high.
I know.
We said, "Hey, look at this. This is great. We could be right here. We can go fishing. We can get food. We can do this. We can do that, and we can move commerce. So let's live here." And that's exactly what happened. And when you look at it now, people say, well, we should just abandon it and get out of it. Well, you're not going to move these buildings out of here. You have to do everything you can to prevent that from ever happening again.
But I'm still surprised that there wasn't some knowledge, because geology was in its infancy, of course, throughout Europe in the 1800s and into the 1900s. Someone should have known that you don't build that close to a meandering old river. You know what I mean? Like there's a.
But mostly, look at these communities up and down the river. They built them there. They built them not right next to it.
I know, but whether there are ancestors from Germany, Europe, Lithuania, Russia, they had a pretense for knowing that rivers flood like that. Why did they allow this to happen?
I think they just thought I don't know, but think about it. It probably flooded while they were there too, and they kept on coming back.
I guess it's just human nature, right?
It is human nature.
How about this? You were mentioning how times have changed since the 60s, that one decade. I remember, and this ties into your river career, being a kid growing up just north of Carbondale and Simpson, the Lackawanna River in the 70s. My buddies and I, whatever you grow up in, you just assume that's the norm. And, you don't really try to change it. You just accept it. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing, of course, solid waste, feces, toilet paper floating down the Lackawanna River, which was just 3 blocks down from the house I grew up in. And that was the norm. And we would laugh at the river as if that's a cesspool of flowing water. Don't get near it. You just accept that. It's a disgusting thing. Look at it, have fun with it, make jokes out of it, but don't go near it.
We did the same thing when we were growing up. And then when we were adults, you would come down the river and you look at it, because all of the stuff that was flowing into it, primarily from the mines, from the coal mines.
Not to mention the mines, yes.
And all that mine waste and all that mine water, you see the foam on top of the river. Everybody talking, don't go in that river.
Don't go in the river, raw sewage.
Right, raw sewage. And it was constantly like that. But now it's changed quite a bit. That river's pretty clean.
So now I know the Lackawanna, the tributary to the Susquehanna, is one of the cleanest rivers in the East now. And I kayak it and I swim in it and I bike it around it. I mean, it's just beautiful now.
It has been clean, and we put people on the water all the time, but there are still some of those. And even younger people, I'm always surprised. But then again, they're getting this from adults and from somebody else. Oh, I wouldn't touch that water. I said, what are you talking about? I said, it's clean. I said, there's nothing wrong with it. And we'll have boats on the water, for Riverfest and all that, and people get in them and they go, and they don't have a problem with it.
Oh, I know. But if it were the 80s, you would, because it's programmed into our mindset.
It's programmed into your brain, but there are still some of those who are of the same mindset.
Yeah, they still see it and accept it like it's a dirty thing. Keep away. There it is, but keep me away from this thing. But no, that's definitely not true anymore, since the treatment plants. I took environmental chemistry as a part of my master's degree at college, and my professor would go to the effluent coming out of a treatment plant and fill up his cup and have a drink in raw sewage, out water. And we all had shots of water at the other end of the treatment plant. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of the river and the cleanups,
yep,
I have another prop. And this involves your station. And
okay, here we go. He's got props, folks, for the non-visuals. Let me tell you what he's got here.
Okay, but this also involves one of your reporters who was attacked verbally by one of our volunteers.
How long ago?
1997.
1997, a WNP reporter attacked by a heckler. Okay, here we go.
Man, by one of our volunteers who was a little shaky at that time.
Okay. I can't see this too good. He's holding up a picture, and it is. I don't know that face. Should I?
That's me.
Okay. So
you see what I'm holding?
You're holding. You're in a TV set.
The television screen.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Let me tell you the story about that. And I'll tell you who the reporter was. Well, we had the river was extremely low, and one of our goals was to keep the river, try to keep it as clean as possible.
Right.
The river was low, and we saw one of our volunteers happen to spot all these tires floating. Not floating; they were just sitting there, thousands of tires. So we said, let's see if we can get together a group. Maybe we can get about 10 volunteers go down there. Maybe we pull out 100 tires.
Right.
Well, we put the word out. We had 200 volunteers. We pulled out about 2,000 tires, and we did some media to try to attract some people.
Right.
So we're down there, and it's very difficult to get there. I don't know if you know where the Black Diamond Bridge is.
No.
It's in back of Kirby Park. It's inaccessible. You can't even drive back there except with heavy duty vehicles. And that's how we got them out of there, with military vehicles, through Congressman Kondorsky. So we're pulling all these tires out, and some of them are these huge industrial tires, and they're full of mud. So we're in the water up to here, and we're pulling tires out, and we're going through all this, and we're packing them up, and it's muddy, it's dirty, I'm filthy. That picture says it all. And I found this television, part of a television set, so I put it up in front of my face, and somebody took the picture, and they made it into a photo for me.
So that your head is inside of a TV in that picture?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So we're doing all this, and I look up, and this is where the trestle for the Black Diamond Bridge. It's a pretty steep hill. So we're pulling all these tires out, we're piling them up, and lo and behold, one of your reporters, I look, and here's one of your reporters coming down this hill, and here's the camera guy, the photojournalist, lugging, and remember, this is 1997, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I'm sure the technology has changed. Those things are much lighter.
Yeah, I'm a lot smaller.
This thing is heavy. So she comes down and says, I said, how in the world did you get down here? Because you can't park close to there. So she says, we heard about this, and we want to, could we interview somebody? I said, okay. So we're doing an interview, and one of our volunteers, who can, as I said, can be a little shaky at times, he spots this. He comes running up, and he starts yelling at them. Why don't you cover more of this? How come you don't do more stories on this? And he's dropping the F-bomb.
Get out of here.
And I said, Dave, don't attack these people. He's yelling at them because it's their job. It was Paulage and Giacomo.
Oh, man. And he's yelling at the wrong person because they are there to cover what he wanted to be covered, right?
He's yelling at them, you should go to your station. You should be doing more of this. Hey, please, they're here to help us. They're going to do a nice story about this. Hopefully it'll inspire somebody else. But
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny stuff. Well, John, since you've been connected to the river and all of these stories for so long, for decades, do you think the attitude now is changing? And by that, I mean, again, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and it used to be, remember the old phrase, throw it over the bank? People would just everyone had a backyard landfill. Mm-hmm. If you have something you don't want, you roll it in the river. Tires, garbage.
Yep.
And it used to, carriages from supermarkets. The river was just like this dumping source. So now I think that attitude is gone. Not only, of course, are the rivers cleaner because of environmental regulation, but I think the attitude towards rivers. Do you see? I mean, do you still find people who are abusing it, or is that, if you were to graph what you anecdotally have seen and witnessed over the last 20, 30 years, a change?
It has changed, and it's a minimum. Let me give you an example, one quick example. When I first became part of the Riverfront Parks Committee, a friend of mine said, we're doing this trash pickup. So we started near the base of the Market Street Bridge, and we went from the base of the Market Street Bridge under the arches to about 200 yards into the park.
Okay.
About 300 bags of trash. Now we have cleanups that go from Pier Street, from the Veterans Bridge, from the Pier Street Bridge, all the way back into the park, all the way down into the natural area, and we may get 10 bags of trash or 15. And much of that, and some of that is when we have high water events. Well, water seeks its own level, as some people do. And that's a whole other story. But the water seeks its own level, so we get some of the trash that floats in from somewhere else. It's not always the trash that's dropped locally. So the point is, it is changing.
Isn't that remarkable? A more positive outlook on the river and the people who live near it. That's what it's all about.
Hey, I know pretty soon we have to cut this off. I don't know how much time we have, but I think I have been involved in something that not one of your other podcast guests has ever been involved in.
What is it?
I'm going to show you a prop.
He's got another prop here, folks, and he's pulling out a long cylindrical thing. I'm trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a baseball bat, but it's not. Is it a lighting implement? I can't.
Yeah. Can you see this dark material on the inside?
No. Yes. Yes.
That is the char remains of the Olympic flame.
So that is the Olympic torch.
That's my Olympic torch.
From what?
I carried the torch. I was in the Olympic torch relay for the 2002 Winter Olympics in 2001.
Is that right?
I was part of the relay.
I need to see that video someday.
I have photos that I couldn't find. I was going to bring them in. Yeah, I was part of this thing is 3 feet long and it's 3 pounds.
No, why? Because you're a runner?
No, there's
I mean, you were in your 50s at the time.
yeah, it was in 2000. I've been running since 1978.
Okay.
But
That's prop number 3, by the way. All 3 have been interesting.
pardon me?
That's prop number 3. They've all been good. You got to watch the YouTube channel, folks.
Well, here's how that happened. In 2001, the job I had, one of the way this works, you know, the Olympics, the network tries to really create a lot of interest in them. So typically and I don't even know if they still do it. Whatever host country it is, they take the Olympic flame from Greece and then they bring it to the host country. You know, they light the torch and whatever, and then they have a relay that goes around the country and it's broadcast on television to create interest in watching the Olympics. So there's a lot of people involved because there are small sections that you run in. My section was in Princeton, New Jersey in 2001, about 3 days before Christmas. There were 35 or 40 of us that completed that section in Princeton. The way you were chosen, there's a certain number that are celebrities, obviously, because they get the most attention. Then there are a certain number that when they go through a media market, say if NBC is doing it, they would grab somebody from Channel 28.
Okay.
Keith Martin, I don't know if you remember Keith Martin.
Yes, of course.
Keith Martin did it in Baltimore, Maryland the day before I did.
Gotcha.
And then there was a certain percentage that were allocated to those who did community service. Somebody had to nominate you.
Here comes John Mayday. Here comes John Mayday.
Somebody nominated me from the place I worked, and I didn't even know they nominated me.
Because you were a runner and a servant to the community.
And the running part was irrelevant to that.
Oh,
person.
okay.
The fact that I was, see, you didn't have to run with the thing. People walked with it because people were concerned about dropping it.
Right.
So I was nominated. I received the packet of information. I was through the packet because I didn't know what it was, because Chevrolet was one of the sponsors of it. So I read this big packet of information, and I thought somebody's trying to sell me a car. So I threw it on the side. And a couple of days later, I thought, you know what? Maybe I better look inside there because there may be some personal information that I don't want to throw this in the trash.
Yeah.
You open it, and I started reading it, and I thought, this has to be a scam. You've been selected to carry the Olympic torch and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Sounds scammy.
Yeah, like the Nigerian prince wants your money.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, there's a phone number here, so I called it. And they said, yes, this is legitimate. But if you didn't call within 2 days, you would have been out because we needed to know. So I did. So I called. I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, right. So do you get to keep that torch or did you steal it?
No. Here's the way they did it. You get to buy it.
Oh God.
But the proceeds went to Special Olympics. But who wouldn't want to buy that?
Yeah, right. How much? Come on, give me the price.
I think it was $300.
Okay, that seems fair.
But the proceeds go to Special Olympics. So to me, it was it's a good investment.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So I went to Princeton, New Jersey, but that was also the year of 9/11. That happened.
That's right. Right.
And so this thing was starting in October. So this almost didn't go because this thing was almost canceled because of 9/11. But the powers that be said, no, we have to go on with this. They're not going to stop us from doing what we want to do. They're not going, they're not going to defeat us. So I drove to, but before that, of course, you know how you are, with your friends. People were saying to me, some of my friends said, hey, what if you trip and fall with that thing?
Yeah, it was a glass, right? Glass and aluminum.
Yeah. And then the flame goes out because at that point in time, you're the only person on the planet that has the Olympic flame while you're carrying that. Because it goes from, you transfer the flame from torch to torch.
I love it.
There was a butane cartridge in there.
See, folks, who we get here on the podcast, torch carriers, one and only in Northeastern PA, probably one of the few.
And here I am.
Well, John, before we wrap it up, I just want to mention a few things. We left out a little bit of a gap. So when we left you in the 70s and 80s, two things happened. You got married and you had a career. What was your career?
I've had a couple of them.
Okay.
18 years with IBM.
Okay.
Which worked well, good, because that's one of the reasons I could do what I do now.
Right.
I invested well. I also worked at the Wilkes-Barre Chamber of Commerce for a few years, for about 8 years, and I worked at the Little Flower Manor. I don't know if you knew what that was.
No.
It was a skilled nursing and assisted living facility. I was their fundraiser and their promotions. I ran all the events and I coordinated the capital campaign that built the assisted living facility. I worked there for 10 years.
So you're always entrenched in the community, it seems, trying to do fight the good fight, so to speak.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
What are the alternatives?
So you're right. I know you can't, like you said in the opening of the podcast, you don't want to sit back in the rocking chair watching reruns of MASH, right?
Right. Who wants to do that? But then some people want to do that, but that was the theory. That was, typically the demographic years ago. You went to work, you were born, you went to high school, maybe you went to work in the mines or you went to work in a factory or went to work for somewhere. You worked your 20 or 30 years, you retired, and then somebody said you have to sit on the porch. Now you can sit on the porch and relax. And about 5 years, you were dead. So
it brings up the old adage when some people say, when are you going to retire? And then the answer is retire from what? Or retire to what, right? Yeah, life is life.
Who wants to retire? Bob Dylan, Entangled Up in Blue, the great line. The only thing I know how to do is keep on keeping on.
I love it.
Just keep going. And there's another great line in that song because he talks about people sitting around looking like furniture. And those are the people I do not want to be around.
Oh, I love it. See, you're an inspiration. And the wife, that didn't work out.
No, that was interesting.
I'm looking for dirt.
Well, we met there in 1969, and we had this relationship. And then in 1985, we got married. And then in 1989, we were divorced.
Wow, 4 years. You seem like a very compatible guy.
Well, but we were together.
Oh yeah, from 69 to 85, yeah.
No, but I think what happened was, people change. Sometimes people change. Sometimes their attitudes change about things. And, we built a house, we bought a house, and then she talked me into building a house right across the street from where we had a house because there was a lot open. And I said, yeah, that all sounds like a good idea. It looks like a good investment. We could put whatever we want in there. And then, but I think that became maybe overwhelming. I'm not sure, but then things change and she decided she wanted to do something different. And I said, you know what, I'm disappointed, but people change. So, you don't feel animosity. You just have to be understanding. So, and then, so it's been interesting ever since.
You're a wise man. So at what year did you quote unquote retire from the IBM or whatever else? So you've been retired how long?
The last paid job I had was at the Chamber of Commerce, and that last paying gig ended in 2014.
2014. Okay. So, you're going on almost a decade without a paying job, so to speak.
Yeah.
And now entrenched in the river and its efforts to make it a positive experience here in northeastern central Pennsylvania. So I think we'll end this with unfortunately, this hits on a day when your Riverfest had already ended. but your duties don't end. Could you tell a little bit about what you want to tell everyone about the your doings concerning the Susquehanna River or rivers in general?
Well, we constantly educate about it. The one thing we educate about is, and not many people realize this, everybody lives downstream, and everything in this river flows into the Chesapeake Bay, and we have to keep on reminding people of that. So anything that flows into the Chesapeake Bay will eventually end up halfway around the world into that massive island of plastic that's floating around. That's become a serious problem. So we use the river as a catalyst to teach about the environment, that it's a grand river. All bodies of water are grand, but they're also delicate, and they have to be treated that way. They have to be treated with basically kindness. We don't want to be the problem for them. We don't want the impact that we have be affected by someone halfway around the world. It isn't right. We have to be courteous. We have to be respectful of each other, and we have to be respectful of the environment.
Here, brother. Here, brother. And then everybody benefits from this. That's the beauty of it.
But it's not easy for people to do that. Sometimes people like to take the easier path. It's easier to drop something instead of taking it over there to the trash can. Or it's easier not to think about that as their responsibility. We are all responsible. We're here for a short period of time. We leased this spot, and we owe a responsibility to leave it better than when we came here.
Yeah, you make great points. And the reminder that everything that goes down your sink or through your toilet ends up in the Chesapeake, the Gulf Stream, and ends up off the coast of Europe and Norway and Sweden and England. Yeah. It's and then a part of the circulation of the ocean. It's all one, man. It's all one.
But do you know how difficult that is sometimes to get somebody to understand?
People, they don't think that way. I understand that. My beef is always this, because the river is a beautiful place to spend your time, enjoyment, leisure, kayaking, etc. There are people who go to Disneyland every year and never even once went near the river or kayaked it or went on a canoe. What are these people thinking? Come on.
Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that.
It's such a wonderful experience. Your blood pressure will drop. You can hear the bird.
I'm not standing in line for anything.
Wait a minute. I'm going to quote you on that because I like that one. John Maday, I'm not standing in line for anything. Oh man, we think alike, brother. Well, it was a good time with you, man. Keep fighting the good fight for the rivers, and it was a great talk, I think, for the last hour. You're a good man. You're a great American.
Well, I just look at myself as I'm just some ordinary schmo who does now. But I've always been this way. I've always had this attitude that, we are what we are, and we can only do what we can do. And let's just keep on trying to, as I said, just respect each other, just get through it, and don't create, as you say, don't create drama. Don't make a big deal out of everything.
I hate drama.
And I also like to look at it this way too. And at times, just leave me alone.
All right. No lines for this guy. Thanks, John Maday, brother. We're off.
Okay.
Curiosity. What are you so curious about? Everything, Mr. Curiosity. About